Hello everyone, this is International Master Robert Jamieson from Kids Unlimited in Melbourne, Australia. And today I thought we'd talk about thinking like a grandmaster. Indeed, that's the title of my favourite chess book, which I have here, written back in the 1970s by Russian Grandmaster Alexander Kotov, who was a very strong player. And he tried to explain the thinking process, how we analyse. He contended that the average player would think like this. So it's your turn to move. So you're thinking, what do I do? Do I do move A? Think, think, think. No, that doesn't look any good. What about move B? Think, think, think. No, don't like that. Move C? No, don't like that. What to do? Maybe I've missed something in that move A. Go back, analyse the move A again. Still doesn't look any good. Maybe I'm move C. Maybe I missed something in that. Analyse. And suddenly it dawns on you, move D. That looks fantastic. So you play move D, and as soon as your hand lets go of the piece, you realise you've blundered your queen. I think we can all relate to that, but that's not a very efficient thought process. So Kotov tried to explain that grandmasters have a different way of doing it. They first off, when it's their turn to move, they look at something called candidate moves. So a candidate move is a move that you think may be the best move in the position that you would like to play. So we can't analyze every move. So we look around and we might say, well, in this position, I have 3 candidate moves. Then you analyze each move once, come to your decision. But before you make the move, very important, you check it to see what your opponent's going to apply. Just make certain it's not a blunder. Then you play the move. So that was Kotov's thinking process. Now, in my experience, most people don't think that way at all. Most people just seem to be, particularly I'm thinking of younger players or inexperienced players, just seem to be searching for a move they like the look of. So if you're a very young player, you probably like taking. So you see a good take or a check, or maybe you can attack something and threaten to take it. So you see a move, you like it, you play it. Actually, it's interesting because you watch 2 young kids play and they'll be hammering out moves and they'll finish the game in a couple of minutes. Whereas you look at Magnus Carlsen, the world champion, he might play a game and it takes 4 or 5 hours. You might think for 30 minutes just on one move. So is Magnus a really slow thinker? I don't think so. But the better you are, the more you realize how much there is to actually think about. The young kids, they don't understand what there is to think about. They see a move, they like it, they play it. All right. Now, let's talk a little bit about analyzing. So we're trying to choose our move. There are 2 factors that we need to take into account. One is analysis, the other is evaluation. So for instance, you could choose a move solely on evaluation. So like I decide I'm going to play h3. There's nothing much to analyze. I just want to improve my pawn structure and make certain I don't get mated on the back rank. So I can play h3 just based on evaluation. If there are tactics on the board, though, I have to analyze. I go there, he goes there, I go there, he goes there, and so on. But at some point, you have to stop your analysis and evaluate and say, well, this is good for me, this is bad for me, this is a draw. So it's a combination of analysis and evaluation. Now, why do we make mistakes in our analysis? Generally, there's 2 reasons. Firstly, we don't look widely enough. So we don't look at enough candidate moves. We miss a really good idea. I remember someone once said, it is more important to look around than to look ahead. So make certain you first off look around for ideas. The other problem is when we start analysing, we stop at some point. So for instance, analyse. Oh, that's no good. It loses my queen. So most players say, well, I'm not doing that. Go back. But the better players will say, okay, I've lost my queen, but let me just double check there's not something sort of 1 or 2 moves after that that is really cool. and they tend to look a little bit deeper. So the better players probably look wider and they look deeper. And they're also a lot better at choosing the correct moves to analyze. They don't waste their time looking at moves that are silly, that perhaps a less experienced player might look at. All right, so I have a little example to test your powers of analysis. So I want you to have a look at this position. It is black to play. Now spend a bit of time, maybe 5 minutes if you like, and tell me whether you think it's going to be a win for white or a win for black. So just analyze, reach your conclusion, and then come back to the video. So pause the video here and start analyzing. Okay, I hope you've all reached your conclusion and put a bit of thought into it. So here's the story. In this position, the C-grade player playing white says, well, it's going to be a win for me. Look, I have a double attack. I'm attacking his queen and I'm attacking his A pawn. So when he saves his queen, I'll be able to gobble the A pawn, I'll be a pawn up, and it's better for me. So that's the evaluation of the C-grade player. His opponent, however, is a B-grade player, a little better. And he says, no, I disagree. I think it's a win for black, because look what I've found. Rook takes knight. Now this is fantastic, because if you take my rook, I can gobble your rook, and I'm a piece up. And if you take my queen, I just give you a check, you come back, I gobble your queen, I gobble your rook, I'm a piece up. So B-grade player, win for black. All right. At that moment, an A-grade player walks into the room, comes up to the board, has a quick sticky beak, and says to the B-grade player, no, I think you're wrong. I think it's a win for white, because I can play this move, Queen F1. Now I have a double attack. I'm attacking your rook, I'm attacking your queen. If, for instance, you save your queen, I can take your rook, and whilst you have a pawn for the exchange, it's still going to be better for me. So I think white is winning. At that moment, the master player walks into the room, has a look at the position, and says, no, you're wrong. It's a win for black. Because even though you have a double attack on my queen and my rook, I can just move my rook, and you take my queen, and now you have queen for rook and knight, but I have a killer threat. I'm going to play rook c1, and when you take me, I'm going to fork your king and queen, and I'll be a piece up. So the master player says win for black. At that moment, an international master walks into the room. He too has a look at the position and says, no, you're wrong. I think it's a win for white. I can get out of your threat. Look, I just play king h1, and now you can't play rook c1 because there's no fork. Win for white. At that stage, the grandmaster walks into the room. He has a look at the position and says, well, it looks like it could be a win for white, but I don't think so, because I have a killer move. I am going to play knight e2. Now I am threatening rook c1, and if you take my knight, it's still a win for me, a win for black. So the grandmaster has found a win for black. Now, normally I stop the lesson here, but these days I think we should go one further step. So now a little 10-year-old blonde boy from Norway walks into the room, named Magnus Carlsen, walks up to the board, see what the grandmaster has just analysed, and says, would you like me to check it on an engine? So he whips out his iPhone, plugs in the position, and says to the grandmaster, yes, you're right. It's forced mate in 17. Black wins. End of analysis. Okay, so how far did you get? Were you a C grade player, a B grade player, master, international master, grandmaster? But this is a good example of the sort of analysis that you may need to do, that you need to look at. You don't just stop after one tactic and think, yes, I'm winning. You need to look deeper just to be sure. Okay, well, I hope that's given you a little bit to think about analysing your chess games, and will be beneficial to you in the future. See you next video.